Namaste. Hello, Dr. Kausthub Desikachar. Hello, dear friends all over the world who are joining us today on the interview of compassion and self-compassion. So give us a little hug or give us a little like or a heart if you hear us, if you see us. Is everything technically okay? Hello, Aurelie. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Hello, thank you very much. Sorry, Kausthub, did you say something?
Aurelie.
Aurelie, hello, and we have 3 thumbs up. This means that we are okay, Kausthub. So again, warmly welcome to our yet again very interesting interview that we are publishing with Dr. Kausthub Desikachar now from the end of the March, starting with the first wave of pandemic in the world, in order to help people, in order to join in good spirit, and in order to learn something more and connect on energy, deeper energy level. So we had the 2 weeks ago, we had a workshop together with Dr. Kausthub Desikachar about art of healing in yoga and healing in art, and it was really great. Some of you are here that join us on workshop. Hello. So and now we are proceeding with these interviews today with compassion and self-compassion, the misunderstood qualities in us, in the world, and I am so very welcome, so very enthusiastic in what we were going to hear. So maybe you put the speakers off, Kausthub, because we can hear you. We can hear myself. We can hear me. So, as you all know, Dr. Kausthub Desikachar is the current lineage holder of the Vini Yoga tradition. He's yoga teacher, yoga therapist, healer, and a spiritual advisor. And he wants to, as far as I know him, include the sharing of the authentic yoga teaching in this modern world, and is building bridges between healing modalities to promote our spiritual health. And I'm Katja Ujcic. I'm therapist for gifted. I'm expressive art therapist and yoga therapist and executive coach. I'm working on, let's say, the nexus of psychology and spirituality. And I'm using my own approach on how to connect to inner giftedness and how to focus on potentials and empower our talents to thrive in, let's say, creativity, innovation, and our own talents. And today we will talk about compassion and self-compassion. And let's say that these qualities are so honored in human beings, but both run very deep and are in their pure form very hard to achieve. This is why they can be misplaced, they can be misunderstood, or maybe also not appropriately, let's say, delivered. So we will talk about compassion and self-compassion so it's 2 different, let's say, approaches towards life, but they have the same core, the core of passion. And but before we start, Kausthub, I would love to invite you to chant for us a nice chant for this compassionate interview.
Namaste, Katja. Thank you. You really want to torture the people with my chanting so that the interview looks better, right? That's your basic objective.
I am very manipulative.
Yes, because your
Yes.
chanting is not so good. Anyway, I will do one chant. that is called Shri Ashta Shloki, and I'll explain why I do this chant a little bit later. Shri Ashta Shloki Shri Parashara Bhattarya Shri Rangesha Purohitaha Shri Vatsankasuta Shriman Shreyase Mestu Bhoyase Om Akarartho Vishnur Jagadudaya Raksha Pralayakrit Makarartho Jivastadupakaranam Vaishnavamidam Ukaro Ananyarham Niyamayati Sambandhamanayo Traisarastrayatma Pranava Vimamartham Samadishat Mantra Brahmani Madhyamena Namasa Pumsaswarupangatihi Gamyam Shikshitami Puratah Paschadapi Sthanataha Swatantran Nijarakshanam Samuchita Vrittischa Nanyochita Tasyai Harer Vivichya Khatitham Swasyapi Narhantataha Akararthayaiva Swahamahamatha Mahyanna Nivaha Narana Nityanam Ayanamiti Narayana Padam Yamahasmai Kalam Sakalamapi Sarvatra Sakalasu Avasthasvavisyuh Mama Sahaja Kainkarya Vividaha Deha Saktatma Buddhir Yadi Bhavati Padam Sadhu Vidyatriteyam Swatantriyando Yadisya Nischedviteyam Atmatranen Mukaschennama iti Japadam Bandhava Bhasalolah Shabdan Narayanakyam Vishaya Chapaladhische Chaturthim Prapannaha Netratvan Nityayogam Samuchita Gunajatan Tanukyapanancha Upayam Kartavya Bhagam Twatamituna Param Prapyamevam Prasiddham Swamitvam Prarthananancha Prabalatara Virodhi Prahananda Shaitan Mantarantrayate Chetyadhigata Nigama Shadvadoyam Vikandaha Ishanan Jagatamadish Daita Nityanapayam Shriyam Samshritya Shrayanochita Khila Gunasyangri Harerashraye Ishtopayataya Shriya Cha Sahita Yatmeshwarayarthaye Karthundasyamaseshama Pratihitan Nityantvahan Nirmamaha Matpratyarthayamayoktamakhilam samtyajya dharmam punaha Mamekam madavaptaye sharanamityartho avasayam kuru Tvamevam vyavasaya yuktamakila jnanadipurno hyayam Matprapti pratibandhakair virahitam kuryam shucham mankrutha Nischityatvadadhinata mai sada karmadhyupayan hare Kartum tyaktum api prapattum analam sedami dukkha kulaha Etadjnanamupeyasho mama punah sarvaparadhakshayam Kartaseti dridosmite tu charamam Vakyam smaran sarathe Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste, my dear friends.
Namaste. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your compassion and to tolerate my very, very bad chanting. Namaste.
I think maybe you should activate your self-compassion.
Yeah, that's why I wanted you to say that. That's why I was saying that comment. Just joking.
So did you wanted to say something about the chant, or?
This chant is called Ashtashloki. It is composed by an acharya called Parashara Bhatta, who lived in the 1100s, the 10th or
Yes.
11th century, I think you would say, or 11th or 12th century. I don't know which is the correct way to say it. And he was the successor of one of our ancestors called Ramanujacharya, one of the most important acharyas in our tradition. And this chant is about the chant Om Namo Narayanaya, the mantra, which is very important for our tradition, the Moolah Mantra. And the reason I share this is because Acharya Rama, this verse, this chant is explaining the more significant meaning of the Moolah Mantra, which includes the meaning of the mantra Om. And the story about this Moolah Mantra itself is one of great compassion, because Ramanuja is asking his Acharya to teach the mantra for liberation to him, or he is going as a student. And the teacher is asking Ramanuja to come back and go back and come back again, go back and come back again. And he's testing Ramanuja 16 times whether he's really sincere. And finally, at the 16th time, he says, okay, I am convinced of your dedication and sincerity. I will teach you the mantra under one condition. He said, don't teach anybody else. This is a mantra only for you. If you teach other people, you will go to hell. You will go to hell. So Ramanuja, he learns the mantra, and then what he does is he goes to the middle of the village, starts ringing the village temple bell, and everybody starts to congregate in the center of the village. He keeps ringing the bell again and again and again, and then he shares this mantra to everybody. And when the teacher hears about this, he comes and he's very angry with Ramanuja, and he comes and says, how dare you teach this? I told you not to teach this to anybody. Now you are sure to go to hell. So Ramanuja folds his hands to his teacher and says, sir, when you initiated me into this mantra, you told me that through this mantra, I can get liberated and I will go to heaven. So if I die and go to hell, in which place, if all these other people can go to heaven, then that death is worth it. Because I'm only one person going to hell, whereas all these people will go to heaven. So it's a very touching story about Ramanuja's compassion to the people. And of course, the teacher comes and hugs him and says, of course, if you have this kind of an attitude, you also will not go to hell. You will certainly go to heaven. And he embraces Ramanuja and says, you are now my teacher. You opened my eyes. So the student becomes the teacher through an act of compassion. And that is how compassion is so important. The word is, English word is a little bit difficult for me because I'm not so sure about the origins of the word. But in Sanskrit, it is karuna, daya, kripa. There are many words like that. And that is what is the story behind. And Parashara Bhatta is the successor, the immediate successor of Ramanuja. And he is explaining the intimate meaning of this Moolah Mantra that Ramanuja taught to everybody. And that is the chant I chose today. Namaste.
Very, very nice story, very enlightened story. So, yes, why is Why is compassion, let's say, when I was searching for that interview, a symbol of what should I put on social media, I, of course, find just hearts of compassion. Why is a heart a symbol of a heart? Why is that a symbol of compassion? Why do you think?
Just to correct you, I think when you put on the social media, you put my photo. My photo is not a heart. My photo
I
is
put your photo and a
my
symbol
photo
of
is
heart.
quite scary to all the people.
No, was a good photo, yeah.
So anyway, going back to the question about why the heart is so important in the concept of compassion. Let me clarify it by saying one first thing before I go back to the concept of compassion. I think heart is the most important place for anything that is noble. And therefore, it is a symbol of compassion as well, because compassion is a very noble thing. Compassion is only coming from the heart. Compassion cannot come from the head or the brain or too much intellectual inquiry. And that is the big problem I also see in the yoga field, where there are many people who say they are practicing yoga and they are even big yoga masters and call themselves gurus and acharyas and scholars and masters and things like that. But they are too much in their brains, too much in their intellect, and they cannot have, therefore, the concept of things like Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha, which are all aspects that come from our heart. And the reason I say this is because compassion is a gift that we are offering to another. And actually, it's not just we, it is the divine in us who is offering it to the divine in the other. When we offer compassion to somebody, usually we are offering it to somebody who is suffering. And in Sanskrit, the word vyadhi is that which defines suffering. Is a word that is very beautiful because it basically means somebody who is disconnected from the divine. So when you are offering compassion to another person, in some way you are giving them a means and access to your divine in your heart, so that through which they can have access to their own divine in their hearts. So in a some certain way, this can only come from heart to an heart when the two hearts are open. And that's where there is this concept of, how do you say, a connection which involves a giving and a receiving. There is feedback. It's not just one way. And sometimes, even just that the person is able to receive your compassion with an open heart is enough feedback, and you will not feel depleted. Whereas if you are giving to somebody when they are not receiving, you will feel depleted.
Mhm.
And that's where this concept of compassion is so important and so critical for humanity, because it is one simple way through which we can establish a connection with each other, and through that connection, establish a connection to that divine that is involved, that is deeply seated in our heart. I think compassion is not our strength, it is the strength of that divine in us. It's not coming from our ego. And that is where it has to be done um, from a place of no obligation. You're
Mhm.
doing it even without the obligation that that person who is receiving it is saying thank you, because perhaps that person at that time, in
Yes.
that moment, is not able to say thank you because they are suffering so much.
Yes, exactly. So it's as Shailaja, hello Shailaja, and hello the others. Shailaja, you are mentioning that compassion flows from heart to heart, and you find it beautiful. And that point, I'm asking you. So, compassion exists in a pure form. What would be that pure form then?
Well, pure form is a very strange way to say it, because in English, pure means something that is clean. But what I feel is that it comes from an authentic form, which means You're supporting the other. Basically, think about it like compassion as a container. Okay? Now, in a container, you want to pour some water, or in my case, for example, some tea. Now, you want to pour the tea in it, but the container has to be pure so that it holds only tea and not some other dirt. The same way, when compassion is a container that is holding the suffering of the other, and it does not contribute any further suffering, nor does it contribute any kind of expectation saying, I helped you now, so you help me back. That's not compassion, that is a transaction. Compassion does not come from a place of transaction. Transaction is brain to brain, ego to ego, which says, you pat my back, I'll pat your back. And that is the problem today, which a lot of people confuse, because they act from their ego, expecting the others to reciprocate. And if the others don't reciprocate, they get very angry. And that's not really compassion then in the first place. So that's what I would say as a pure form of compassion, or an authentic form of compassion, which is basically a form where you are supporting without an expectation. You are helping, you are holding without an expectation. And it's also very important that you are, since I talked about it as a container, you're holding till the time that person is suffering. Afterwards, you let go.
Yeah.
See,
okay.
My container holds tea till it's whole tea. Maybe afterward, I want to drink coffee in this. I have to clean it. I cannot have the tea, so I have to let go. Because especially in our role in our life, we may need to hold compassion for more than one person at different points of time. So we need to have to also have the capacity to let go. Ego is grasping. Ego says, this is my ownership because I help you, you owe me. Many yoga teachers do that. When they help their students, they say, you owe me. Actually, they owe nothing. They don't owe anything, because it's not the teacher who helped them, it's the divine who helped them. Exactly. The teacher was only a vehicle of the divine.
Yes.
Now, there's another reason why many yoga teachers or many healers, passion, they are not able to hold the compassion because they are not able to act from a place of purity. There's always a transaction, because they're thinking, oh, why should I give energy to this person when I won't get anything in return? That's very transactional, and that is another problem, because ego is always calculating what we will get in return, but that's not where compassion comes from. Compassion does not come from ego at all, and this is a very powerful situation. And that's why compassion is not a weakness, it is a strength. Compassion actually does not deplete you, it actually energizes you.
So sometimes
wait, but I will come to that later. I think you will ask another question. I will come to that later.
Okay. So, but let's say if I observe, and I was thinking, and feeling and exploring the compassion for this interview, for me was very obvious that sometimes compassion is in, let's say, one form of the compassion, which is not pure or authentic compassion, can be also overrated, and it brings ego immediately inside. In some religions, this can be very, very obvious, yeah?
Yes, and it's not only in religion, but also in professions. For example,
yeah.
I never think about my job as a healer, as a profession. I think about it as a dharma. And that's why the word is very powerful, because the word dharma also means to hold. Whereas in a profession, you have an expectation of a transaction. I do this for you, you pay me back, you have gratitude to me, you recommend me to other people. There's a transaction that is engaged. Whereas in dharma, there is no such transaction. As a healer, I will still help somebody, whether they are grateful to me or not, whether they are nice to me or not, I will still help them. And there have been many instances where I've had the honor to help people, even if they have not been very nice to me. And that's
Yeah.
where it's not just about a religious approach, it's also more importantly about a professional approach. The moment you start thinking about things professionally, you are not in the domain of healing, because profession does not come from the heart. Dharma comes from the heart. Profession is a calculating, manipulative kind of transaction. You want to succeed professionally, which means you want to do it at the cost of other competitors. Dharma is not a competition. I don't care about how well or how poorly other yoga teachers are doing who are so-called my competitors. I only, if I want to do it as a dharma, I do it because I am having this as a natural phenomena that I have to help and hold somebody, because that is what has been the gift that God has given me and the responsibility that the divine has given me through this birth. I don't care if somebody is better than me or somebody is worse, because I'm not the only healer in this world. Maybe God has created many warriors for healing others, and each one will have to do their dharma. So I don't have to compare what another person is doing in order to show compassion. If somebody else shows compassion to, let's say, my student or my child or my family member, I don't have to feel jealous or agitated, because that comes from the place of ego. I actually have to feel grateful that, oh, you know what? God has sent somebody else to help my mother, or help somebody else, help my daughter, or help my student. And that's okay. Whereas if it's a profession, then there is all these things called the boundaries of profession. Oh, it's your student, it's my student, it's my mother, it's your mother. It doesn't matter. Somebody else's mother is also like my mother, especially if it's my friend's mother. Somebody else's mother is also my mother, and I will show the same compassion to her as I will to my mother without hesitation. And that's because the divine is asking me to do that from my heart. My conscience is asking me to do that. It's not a professional calculation saying, "Oh, but she has a son. Why should I help them? She has her own son, or she has her own daughter." That's calculation.
Mm-hmm. So
That's where
compassion.
religion only, it's more like the kind of boundaries that we have put as human beings.
So compassion can be misused.
Um,
Or let's say it can be intoxicated maybe with ego.
I
Yeah.
would like to put it this way, that compassion can be made into a transaction, and
Yeah.
that is a misuse or an abuse you can see. And very often people are only compassionate to those they think that they will benefit something.
Yeah.
Those that they think will benefit something. For example, I know some people who will share or promote others on the Facebook, because by promoting the others, they are also gaining something. That's not out of compassion, that's out of a transaction. Whereas there are some others who share even if they don't gain anything, even if they don't gain anything in return. And there are many nice people like that as well. I certainly have my great English teacher Sarah, who is often sharing uh, animal saving petitions on Facebook for others to share, and she's doing it out of love and care for the animals, not because she's going to get something in return. So there are people like this as well, but there are also people who will share some kind of nice things or petition or this or that, because they want to gain something. They want to be perceived as, oh, you know what, I am a compassionate person. Oh, you know what, I am this. There are many business people who do that. They join non-profits to help a cause, because that can somehow justify
Transaction.
all the
Yeah.
nonsense that they are doing in their profit business. So there
Exactly.
are. This is where the line is a bit confusing of what is compassion and what is not.
Yeah. So can we say that the compassion is the absent of the ego then, in its authentic form?
There's no place for ego if there is the compassion. There is no place.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
And it's a phenomenon that is not really very open in the modern era, because sometimes I get feelings about some person. I know that somebody is suffering. I feel that somebody is suffering.
Yeah.
Or I can see their photo on the Facebook or somewhere else and see that they are suffering. And from my heart, I send a message saying, "Hey, how are you doing?" Or what? I mean, are you okay? And things like that. And people are not used to it. Many of them think that I'm intruding in their personal life, or that I have a vested interest, when only I'm trying to offer that compassion. That's where I come to the other point that I wanted to say. In our tradition, in the Vedic tradition, in the Hindu culture, we have a concept that is called Satpatra Viniyoga. That means you have to use the appropriate attitude in the appropriate context, which means if somebody is not willing to receive your compassion, you don't need to show it. So it's not something that you just offer everybody, uh, even without any kind of responsibility or care about whether even they are receiving that compassion. It's like if a child is being fed by the mother and the child doesn't want to eat at that time, it turns its head away. The mother forces. That's not right. If you look at the animal species, the mother never forces her breast to the little puppy. If the puppy wants to drink, it'll drink. If it doesn't want to drink, it will not drink. But as human beings, we are forcing the food into the mother. So that is also an abuse, because we are pushing something that the other person does not want to receive. It's the same with compassion. That's what is called Satpatra Viniyoga. If another person does not want to receive, there's no point in offering that compassion. You offer it somewhere else where they would love to receive. Because there are enough people in this world who would love to receive compassion, who
Yes.
need compassion,
Hmm. So
and who
there
are
are,
eager to receive.
so there are, let's say, some predisposition in order to really be in compassion, in order really to give and receive the compassion. So what are these predispositions? What would you say?
Yeah, as you asked me this question, I'm just looking at the comment from our friend Aurelie, who says, "I love that kind of torture." So at least it's confirmed that it's a torture. Thank you, Aurelie, for confirming. So you are asking about the predispositions about compassion. I think in my this is my personal view, and I may be wrong and not knowing everything. But in my personal view, we are all predestined for compassion as we are created, because there is the presence of the divine. Now, the moment we are disconnected from it, then we lose the capacity to hold compassion for others. Now,
Mhm.
having said that, normally you will see certain attributes in people who have compassion. The first will be that they have some kind of an empathy, a capacity to feel what the others are feeling, which comes only from sensitivity. This is very, very important.
Mhm. Okay.
Compassion cannot come without sensitivity or an empathy. That's the first thing I feel. The second thing I feel is that they will have great strength. I don't mean muscular strength, because there are many people who have like bodies that are built over the gym or yoga, like many yoga people doing all kinds of physical asanas to build their body to be strong and flexible and things like that, but they have no strength of vitality in the heart. When I talk about strength, I talk about that vitality in the heart, because compassion is the capacity to hold somebody in your heart without letting them down, without letting yourself down. Certainly, it's a challenge. And
Yes.
this, so that's the second thing. And the third thing is a kind of detachment, because at some point you have to let go of the person you're holding. You cannot grasp them forever. And also, the detachment is very essential because when you hold compassion for somebody, there's a place for a lot of emotional exchanges, and this can be confusing. Sometimes, especially for example, if there is a man who is holding compassion for a woman, or a woman who is holding a compassion for man, or even woman to woman, man to man, there could be some kind of emotional uh, exchanges that happen, which should not be confused for something else. If I am having compassion to somebody, it does not mean that I am romantically in love with somebody. This is also another fear that a lot of people have, and they don't want to show compassion to the other. That's why I say there should be some kind of a detachment. Finally, and the most important, I would say, again, in my personal opinion, and I will again qualify it, it's my personal opinion. I can certainly be wrong. If somebody wants to prove me wrong, I'm very open to that. Is that for somebody to have compassion, they need to be spiritually oriented. Compassion cannot come from only a place of materialism, because compassion is a spiritual attribute.
Yes.
If there is no sense of spiritual orientation, and I use the word very carefully, I say spiritual orientation, I don't
Very
say
good.
religious orientation.
Mhm.
Expression of spirituality could be in the form of religion, it could be in the form of being in love with nature, connection with humanity, connection with any other form of spiritual expression. But without that kind of a spiritual expression, which they believe in, because I also know a lot of people who talk about different gods, but they never go to temple or worship God or believe in God. They just do it because that gives them a good image. That's not what I mean by spiritual orientation. They really have to believe and engage in that spiritual path to be compassionate. So this would be the cases. And what I would say is, normally, I think this is an answer to one of your next questions.
Already.
So I will wait for this point. I will have compassion for your question asking capacity. But basically,
You
I
can
hope.
tell. I will invent another question. It's nothing. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, compassion. The reason why we need to have compassion is because without compassion, there is no healing, self healing or others healing. There's a lot of people, especially in the yoga field, who think that asanas and pranayama and other techniques are the ones that is actually healing. They are basically in illusion. That is only a small part of the healing process. The compassion that they have in their heart to hold their student and empower their student in their journey of healing, because without that compassion no healing is possible. That's why it's so, it's actually, to use your word, Slovenian word, it's actually a bit of bullshit to actually think that techniques are the healers, and to do techniques on the, or to do research on techniques of yoga is actually a waste of time and energy, because those techniques taught without compassion will have absolutely no value.
Yes.
Absolutely no value.
Very,
And that
very
is
good.
why I feel there's a lot of people in the yoga field also who are wasting their time trying to so-called do scientific research on domains that are beyond the
Beyond.
capacity of
Yeah.
science. It's a waste of
Exactly.
energy, it's a waste of time, and it's basically intellectual diarrhea. That's all. It's just
Yes.
intellectual diarrhea.
Yes. So let's say in different forms, validation of divine, and then actually put it in our heart. And as I feel it, we really need to be very stable inside and have this vitality in the heart, as you said. But for that, I think we really need to also be self-aware and have a lot of self-reflection, as we were talking about many times in this interview. Yeah. Yeah.
And self-reflection and self-inquiry, we call it swadhyaya in yoga, is not an intellectual inquiry. It's an inquiry with through connection. When you look at mother and child, and I use very generic terms, mother and its child. The mother knows by nature how to nourish the child, how to care for the child. The mother does not need to go to a university or a college or do some research, study some research papers. And the reason I use the word mother and child is because the mother and child can be in the form of a mother dog and a child dog, a mother cat, a child cat, a mother bird, a child bird, a mother horse, a child horse, a mother human, a child human. So, absolutely, the feelings of compassion and how to nourish somebody else through compassion is not something that you're going to go into a college to learn. You know this. You become aware of this through self reflection, self connection, and self awareness, like the word you're using. That's the only way. And it's very important because there's also a problem in the modern era because many people think that they have to sacrifice themselves in order to save somebody else, to become a martyr. That's
Yeah.
only like some kind of an emergency situation if there is no choice.
Yes. Okay.
If there is no choice. But in normal sense, if you ignore yourself and say that you will show compassion to others at your expense, that is not care for yourself, that is not self compassion. And there is a saying in India, we say, Shariram Adhyam Kalu Dharma Sadhanam. In order for you to do your dharma, to take care of others, you have to begin with yourself. And I think in English it translates to a saying that is called charity begins at home. I'm not so sure if my English teacher Sarah is watching. If so, please comment about it, or if anybody else is an English speaker. There's a saying which says charity begins at home. Unless you take care of yourself, you cannot hold somebody else. Because I said there is one thing that is very key. Compassion requires strength. If you don't care about yourself, you will not have that strength. You will become weak.
Exactly. So we then enter into another part of this, let's say, the same package is self compassion, which I found also for me, for example, much more difficult to be in, at least I observe it. I say to myself, okay, I need time, let's say, to rest, or I need someone to help me to heal. I need a therapist, or I need just to sleep or something. I need to be heard. My truth need to be heard. All that things, yeah. But it's sometimes so hard to turn that energy towards me because can be, yeah.
This I think is coming not, and you are not alone in this.
I hope.
It's many people who have this
Yeah.
feeling that they are not heard, or they are not allowed to be allowed to express and things like that, and therefore they go to the other extreme, that they don't deserve to be heard, that they don't deserve. These are all things that are caused by traumas that either is coming from their own family or that they inherit from their ancestors. And these are things that are obstacles to being compassionate. And all this will change when we become oriented in the spiritual direction. oriented in the spiritual direction, the true spirituality, not something fake spirituality where you just get a tattoo of Om in your butt and just wear some mala beads in your hand, and then you say, oh, you know what, I'm spiritual. That's not how it is. It's actually coming from the place of connection, because one thing which people often forget about is that we are all highly intuitive. And if we
Yes.
can silence the mind, the intuition will speak, and we just need to follow that intuition. The problem is we have what we call outsourced our intelligence to the intellect or the brain that is basically not so intelligent. That's the problem. The intuition is far more intelligent than our brain. And that's why many people ask this question: how do I practice self compassion? Follow your intuition. Your body will tell you when you need rest, your body will tell you when you need nourishment. Your body will tell you when enough is enough. You don't need somebody else to tell that. And you don't need to ignore your body's signs to push yourself more and more because somebody else is expecting that of you. And that is the problem. All we need to do is just connect with our intuition and let that guide us. And that is very, very important. And I think that answers some of the questions that some people have asked as well. I think your friend
Yes.
Shakuja has had a question. And I think Yana Zelingerova, I think it's a Russian lady, she's also asked some question.
Yes.
How
So
to actually restart the vitality of the heart? It's a simple thing. Just rest it first. If your heart is not vital, it means it has overworked. So just give it some rest. That's all.
yes, sometimes it's Czech lady from Czech.
Huh?
Hello, Jana. Yes. So
Ahoy, Yana, ahoy, ahoy.
Self-compassion is really very important. So we need to listen to our intuition. Sometimes this is very hard because there are, let's say, other illusions around us, and we cannot connect to our inner truth. This is how I found in people. Yeah.
In one simple way, it's basically ego. Either it's what other people have projected on us, or what we are projecting on ourselves that what we should be. So it's basically the ego that is preventing us from listening. Because let's say my body is very tired, I cannot help somebody, but somebody is expecting me to help. It's impossible. It's impossible. So at some point we have to accept that, okay, we can't help others all the time. At some point we have to rest and believe that the divine will send somebody else to help the other person.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's very confusing for me because the lady says she's Czech, but she says hello from Croatia. My God.
Yes, she lives in Croatia, but she's from Czech and listening to Slovene lady and Indian teacher. Very good. Multi-diverse we are here. I think a good point, Valerie just put it, she's saying it is also a long process to authorize oneself to self-compassion. I think this is a very, and living in Sarajevo, Jana. This is Bosnia and Herzegovina, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
the thing is, I don't know if it's the question is, I don't know if maybe it's Valerie's French English translation. I think the more important thing is we need to give ourselves permission to have compassion to ourselves. That's partially what we don't do. And I also struggle with it myself because and it's not conscious. Sometimes it's unconscious because I'm used to helping always other people because that is my role as a healer, that I fail to remind myself enough that I also need sometimes to receive, to allow compassion to enter my heart. And it's not just a struggle for some of you, my dear friends. It's a struggle for all people. I know many great healers who have struggled with this as well. My father was one example. He helped so many other people, but he found it very difficult to receive help for himself. And I know some other people as well who basically know how to take care of other people, but who do not somehow give permission to allow others to help them. And this is a big struggle.
Exactly. Yeah, I found it also, that self-compassion sometimes, or a lot of times, is perceived as selfish. Yeah. So when we say, sorry, I need rest now, people can be, wow, you're so selfish and egoistic. Yeah.
And
So
my answer to that is, so what if people perceive you to be selfish? Just because somebody defines you as something, that's not what you're going to become. Because you have to be clear in your conscience. This is a cup. It's holding tea now. If somebody calls this a television, this is not going to become a television. This is a computer mouse. If somebody calls this a car, it's not going to become a car. The same way, if somebody calls you or me selfish, it's not going to make us become selfish. It's actually telling more about themselves and not about you. The important thing is, in your conscience, you need to be clear whether you are selfish or not, and the conscience will always tell you. There are moments in the recent past I've had to reflect whether certain actions I've done is selfish or correct. And my conscience always tells me if I listen to the conscience. So just because somebody projects something onto you, it doesn't mean that that's the reality, that's their view of you. And if you try to fit the view of other people, 100 people will want you to be 100 different things. You will not just be a schizophrenic with two personalities. You're like a multi-phrenic, multi-schizophrenic with 100 personalities, and that will be a big collapse.
Yeah.
So if somebody says you're selfish because you need rest, just ignore them, because you need to listen to your body.
So, guys, if you have any last questions to Kausthub, please let us know. Put the comment in a post. So, the last questions from me, Kausthub, is where are we now in the humanity in the world according to compassion and self-compassion?
We are very far away from compassion and self-compassion because we are very disconnected from our heart. I tell you, I'm not so optimistic. I wish I was, but I see sometimes, for example, when I've been traveling, I've seen where there have been some accidents, for example, with car accidents, or somebody falls on the floor. For example, in the big flagey, for example, where we did our training in the park, I saw somebody slip from the waterfall and fall. And rather than go and help the person, many people are just videoing their fall to post it on Facebook or post it on Instagram. And it's exactly what is happening when the house is now burning throughout the world. People are more in Facebook or social media than actually connecting and helping the people who need the help. And that's why I feel we are a bit far. The solution is somehow we have to educate our group of people that we are in contact with to be more and more connected to their hearts and act from there. Be more connected to the nature, be more connected to the seasons, be more connected to animals, simplify life and make life less digital.
Yes.
It doesn't mean don't do any digital. It just means make it less digital. Start using more mechanical things like pen and paper. When I start writing with pen and paper, mind, heart, and hands coordinate. Whereas when I'm just using the digital technology, it's not really coming from the heart. And sometimes now, with the digital technology, the phone is suggesting what I should respond. So I'm not even using my mind. the phone is suggesting. So, for example, if you write me an email and I'm looking at the phone, Google already tells me what I should reply to you with. There's a little 3 different options.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Exactly.
so we are not even using our mind now. So the less we become digitally connected, the more we will become connected to our heart. And that is where compassion will grow. So I still feel optimistic, but I don't feel optimistic in the short term. I think we have not yet suffered enough to change. We need to suffer a little bit more to open our eyes. And that is unfortunately the problem of humanity is we don't learn until we really suffer. And when we learn, we don't remember it for long term. That's why if you look at Patanjali's Yoga Sutra presented 2,500 years, is still relevant now, because if humanity had learned it 2,500 years ago, we would not need it now.
Yes, exactly. Yes, we will all be in much more better place now. I agree. We need to really suffer more and more, and all the wars and all the suffering and hunger and anything and everything like illness. Like now, we are just not learning. It's just
The thing is, connection is not a comfortable thing to do, and what
yeah,
we are now moving in the direction of the era is convenient and comfortable things. For example, you have convenience store, convenience banking, convenience shopping, comfort food. All these are terms that we are using, which is basically what's easy, not what is right.
exactly. Yeah. And stay connected to heart is also very difficult because we need to have a lot of self-reflection. Yeah. So this is why we encourage you to stay with us also in 2 weeks time, so we can talk about that, and you can post something. We don't see each other now anymore so much, but at least we can manage it like this and make it digital to serve us, as we put it in the previous interview that we had on digital age. So with that, we will conclude Kausthub. It's 1 hour already. It drives so very fast with you. I would invite you to chant for the end of this interview, and by that chant, we will then say goodbye to our friends and see you in 2 weeks.
You want to start the program with a torture and end the program with a torture. Okay. We do a small peace chant. Om Shanno Mitra Sham Varunaha Shanno Bhavatvaryama Shanna Indro Brihaspatihi Shanno Vishnurokramaha Namo Brahmane Namaste Vayo Eva Pratyaksham Brahmase Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahma vadishyami Ritam vadishyami Satyam vadishyami Tanmam avato Tadvaktaram avato Avato mam avatu vakaram om shanti shanti shanti. Namaste, friends.
Namaste.